The snow came sideways, fast and sharp, like it had something to hide. Deputy Logan Hayes leaned forward in his patrol SUV, wipers scraping across a windshield half-frozen, despite the heat on full blast. Ranger, the sable-coated German shepherd in the passenger seat, had his head low, but alert, ears twitching. It had been a quiet shift so far, the kind Logan never trusted. Brindle Hollow wasn't known for much anymore, an old mining town gutted by time and bad luck. Most nights were a rotation of broken tail lights, noise complaints, and the occasional bar scuffle near the quarry. But tonight felt off. Ranger shifted in his seat. His nose twitched once, then again, more sharply. Then he let out a low growl, not a bark, not a whimper, just a tight, warning rumble deep in his chest. "What is it, bud?" Logan muttered, slowing the vehicle. Ranger stood up, front paws against the dashboard. He stared through the foggy windshield like he saw something coming through the snow. Before Logan could process what, a shape burst out from the white blur. "Jesus!" Logan slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded hard, tires shrieking against the frozen asphalt. The headlights caught him. A boy, small, wild-eyed, running full tilt down the center of the road, waving his arms. The SUV slid to a crooked stop, inches from the kid. Logan was already out, boots crunching on ice. Hey, stop! You're gonna get yourself!" The boy dropped to his knees mid-run, sobbing. "They beat my mom! She's dying!" Logan froze. The boy couldn't have been older than 9. Skinny, filthy. He wore a threadbare hoodie over a flannel shirt, both soaked through, torn at the sleeves. His face was blotched with cold, eyes wide and frantic. Bruises darkened his jaw and neck. "What's your name?" Logan asked, kneeling. "Tell me who you are." Eli Dawson." "Okay, Eli." Logan pulled off his glove and gently touched the boy's wrist, ice cold and shaking. "Where's your mum?" "Back there." He pointed toward a black line of trees swallowed by snow. "Past the trailers. She's not moving." Ranger stepped out of the vehicle and padded over. He didn't bark. He didn't rush. He just stood beside the boy, head tilted, eyes locked on him with an uncanny stillness. Eli looked up, startled. "Is he going to bite?" "No," Logan said. "He's listening." Ranger sat, tail swishing once, then leaned forward and licked a streak of dirt from the boy's cheek. Eli's eyes welled up again, but this time something steadier settled in them. He reached a tentative hand and laid it on Ranger's head. The dog didn't flinch. He leaned into the touch. Logan scooped Eli into his arms and carried him to the back of the SUV, bundling a spare blanket around him. The kid was light as a bundle of wood. As he settled him into the seat, something fell from Eli's hand. Logan picked it up. A photograph, water-damaged and creased to near ruin. A woman, with soft eyes, grease-smudged overalls, and one arm wrapped around Eli in front of a run-down auto garage. "That her?" Eli nodded. "My mom, Ava. She works out by the highway, but she told me not to tell anyone about Kane." "Kane who?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Kane Maddox." The name hit like a crack of thunder under the skin. Logan knew it. Local trouble. Never caught, never charged. Dangerous and careful. He looked up and met Ranger's gaze. The dog was already alert, facing the trees again. "Where exactly is she?" Logan asked. "Old trailer park, past the quarry. The one with the blue door." Logan started the engine. The SUV jerked forward as the tires grabbed purchase. Ranger turned in his seat, watching Eli in the rear. The boy leaned forward. "He said he'd kill her if she talked. He's not going to touch her again." Logan said, voice firm, "You have my word." The trees closed in around the road, their branches heavy with snow. The spotlight mounted on the roof swept back and forth, slicing through the dark. Every few minutes, Ranger let out that same low growl, not loud, just enough to make Logan's grip tighten on the wheel. Then, between the gusts of snow, they saw it. A row of sagging trailers, rusted out and half buried. No streetlights, no signs, just broken things clinging to the edge of town. Logan parked. "Stay in the car," he told Eli. The boy hesitated. "She's inside, I swear." "I believe you. That's why I'm going in. Ranger too." The dog jumped out before the words finished, nose already down, paws silent on snow. Logan followed, flashlight drawn. The trailers were in bad shape. Doors ajar, windows busted. And then, a scent. Blood. Copper and alcohol. Ranger stiffened, then turned down a side path, toward a blue door barely hanging on its hinges. Ranger didn't bark. He pushed his body against the door and waited. Logan entered. Inside was chaos. Shattered glass, broken furniture, stains on the floor that shouldn't be there. The stench of cheap whiskey and something worse. He moved down the hallway, light catching every broken edge. Then he saw her. Ava Dawson, mid-30s, mechanic's jacket, lying crumpled by a dresser, hair matted with blood. Her boots were mismatched. One gone. Bruises marked her collarbone and temple. Logan dropped to her side. "Mom, can you hear me?" Fingers to her neck. A pulse. Weak, but alive. "Ranger, get Eli!" Logan said over his shoulder. The dog turned and vanished. Seconds later, the boy burst in behind him. "Mama!" Eli collapsed beside her, gripping her hand, tears falling fast and silent. Ranger stood watch at the door, unmoving, but his eyes scanned the room like radar. Logan pulled a radio from his belt. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Hayes. Medical emergency. Adult female, unconscious, multiple injuries. Request immediate response to Ridgewood Trailer Park behind the quarry. Snow conditions bad." "ETA," the voice crackled back. 15, maybe 20 minutes. "We'll hold." He glanced down. By the broken table leg was a blood-stained bottle of whiskey, and next to it a crumpled gas station receipt. The name printed at the top. Kane Maddox. Logan's jaw locked. Outside, the wind picked up, sweeping snow into the doorway like ash from a fire not yet out. He looked down at Eli, still clinging to his mother's hand, and then to Ranger, who stood tall, ears forward, tail low and steady. This wasn't just assault. This was a message. And it wasn't finished yet. The SUV's doors slammed shut against the storm, sealing the three of them inside, man, boy, and dog. For a beat, the cabin was quiet except for the ticking of the engine and the low hum of the heater fighting the cold. Logan didn't speak right away. He watched Eli through the rearview mirror, careful not to crowd the moment. The boy was shaking, his lips pale, his eyes fixed on something just beyond the dashboard, something no one else could see. His arms were wrapped tightly around himself under the wool blanket, but the trembling didn't stop. Ranger jumped up into the back seat beside him. No hesitation, no command. He moved like he belonged there. Eli flinched at first, jerking slightly, but Ranger only stood still. Then, in one slow, deliberate motion, the dog lowered his head and gently rested it across the boy's thigh. Eli froze, and then something shifted. A shallow breath. A blink. His hand hovered in the air for a moment, uncertain, then slowly landed on the dog's thick fur. Neither of them moved after that. Logan drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other adjusting the spotlight as it swept over the snow-covered road ahead. The trailer park was already miles behind them, but the image of Ava Dawson lying broken on that floor hadn't left his head. Neither had the bruise on Eli's cheek or the fresh cut above his brow. "Where's your dad, Eli?" Logan asked after a few minutes. The boy didn't answer right away. His fingers tightened slightly in Ranger's fur. When he finally spoke, His voice was low, like it hurt to push the words out. Dead. Couple years now. It was just me and Mum, until him. Him didn't need a name. Logan already knew who he meant. Ranger let out a quiet huff, his eyes half closed, but still alert. Logan glanced at the mirror again. She ever try to report it? Eli shook his head. She said no one would believe her, that he had friends in town, said if she told, he'd make sure she never got to see me again. A deep chill settled over the cabin, colder than the storm outside. Not anymore, Logan said firmly. Eli didn't look up, but he nodded. Just once. They reached the main road leading into Brindle Hollow, the lights of the small medical clinic barely visible through the blur of snowfall. Logan tapped the radio. This is Deputy Hayes, en route to Brindle Clinic with minor male, victim of suspected domestic. Mother is en route separately with EMS. Advise ER to prep a room. A crackle of confirmation answered. Ranger lifted his head, ears flicking forward. He nudged Eli's chest, just a nudge, a subtle gesture that said, I'm still here. Eli blinked and let out a shaky breath. He barked before I came out of the woods. Logan glanced back. Ranger. The boy nodded. Right before I reached the road. It was like he knew I was there. He did, Logan said simply. He's always the first to know. The SUV rolled into the clinic parking lot. The lights above the entrance flickered, buzzing slightly in the cold. Logan stepped out and rounded the vehicle, opening the rear door. I'll carry you if you need. I can walk. But when Eli tried to step down, his legs buckled under him. Before Logan could reach out, Ranger moved first, pressing his body against the boy's side like a brace. Eli steadied himself with one hand on the dog's back. Inside the clinic, a nurse in green scrubs was already holding the door open. Her name was Tanya, local, tough as nails. She took one look at the boy and nodded toward exam room 2. We'll keep him close to his mum, she said to Logan. EMS is 5 minutes out. Logan nodded. Keep an eye on that bruise near his eye, and there's older scarring on his wrist, left side. Tanya's eyes sharpened. She nodded again. But Eli hadn't moved. His hand was still on Ranger, fingers tangled in the dog's fur like it was the only anchor he had left. Can he stay with me? Eli asked, voice cracking. Tanya looked to Logan, brows lifted. He'll behave, Logan said. Better than most adults I know. Ranger didn't need to be told. He padded beside the boy as they followed Tanya down the corridor. Logan trailed behind, silent. Every instinct in him buzzed. This wasn't just another case. He'd seen broken families before. He'd seen bruises half hidden under long sleeves, and kids who flinched when someone raised their voice. But this felt different. Ranger had barked before the boy appeared. Not after, not during, before. Inside the exam room, Eli sat on the edge of the cot. Ranger curled beside him, chest rising and falling slow and steady. A beat passed, then Eli leaned forward and whispered, just loud enough for Logan to hear. He saved me. Logan met his gaze. Yes, he said. He did. And in that moment, the bond between boy and dog wasn't something formed. It was something remembered, like it had always been there, waiting to be discovered. The deeper they drove, the more the road disappeared beneath the snow. Past the town's last porchlight, past the rusted signs that once pointed toward long defunct trailheads, the forest thickened. Pines bowed low under the weight of winter. Brindle Hollow's outskirts didn't exist on most maps, but Logan knew this stretch of backcountry, knew it was the kind of place people ended up when they had nowhere else to go. Ranger stood rigid in the passenger seat, his breath fogging the glass as he stared forward. He shifted once, then let out a low whine, something between a signal and a warning. I see it, Logan murmured, gripping the wheel tighter. Hold steady. Ahead, barely visible through the flurry, a loose cluster of trailers hunched along the frozen river's edge. No lights, no movement, just silent shapes buried under snow and years of neglect. Metal siding warped from frost. Tarps flapping half loose. The air smelled of sap, diesel, and something sour beneath it all. Logan killed the engine. In the back seat, Eli stirred. "That's it. The blue door. Fourth one down." "You stay here," Logan said. "Blanket stays on. Keys are in the ignition. If anything happens, if someone comes to the car who's not wearing a badge, you lay flat and don't make a sound. Got it?" The boy nodded, jaw tight, eyes glassy with fear. Ranger hopped out the second the door opened. No bark, no hesitation. He moved with purpose, nose low, body tense, ears flicking at every sound. Logan followed close behind, flashlight sweeping across warped snowdrifts and trailer steps half swallowed by ice. At the fourth trailer, the blue door hung slightly ajar, banging softly against the frame with each gust of wind. Ranger stopped at the base of the steps and lifted his nose, sniffing long and deep. His tail froze, then slowly dropped low. Logan raised his voice. "Sheriff's Department. Anyone inside, make yourself known." No answer, only the wind. He nodded at Ranger. "Let's go." They moved in tandem. Logan's boot kicked the door the rest of the way open. It creaked hard on its hinges, revealing a dim, crumbling interior. A single overhead bulb swung by a frayed wire, but the power was long dead. The flashlight beam caught broken furniture, upturned chairs, a dented stove ripped halfway out of the wall. A table splintered across the linoleum like it had been slammed from above. Then silence. Then Ranger growled, low, throat deep. He turned sharply and padded toward a back hallway, each step deliberate. His tail didn't wag. His ears were fixed forward like twin antennae. Logan followed the dog's lead, heart drumming faster with each step. His boots slid slightly on a frozen spill across the floor. At the end of the hallway, the flashlight beam landed on her. Ava Dawson. She lay half-curled on the floor beside a broken dresser. Her hair was tangled with blood. One boot missing. Her jacket, stained with oil and something darker, was crumpled beneath her. A dark bruise spread across her cheekbone, and another discolored the side of her neck. Her left hand twitched faintly against the cold floor. "Mum?" Logan said, voice low but firm. He dropped to one knee, checked her pulse. Faint, but alive. Behind him, Ranger sat still, ears pricked, eyes locked on the shadows outside the broken bedroom window. Logan tapped his radio. "Unit 3 to dispatch. I've located the victim. Female, Ava Dawson. Multiple visible injuries. Unconscious but breathing. I need immediate medical at 4150 East River Bend. Abandoned trailer park behind Ridgewood Quarry." The response crackled with static. "Copy that, Unit 3. Ambulance en route. Road conditions may delay arrival. Estimated time 20 minutes. Logan exhaled hard. "Roger that. I'll stabilize her until then." A sharp shuffle sounded behind him. He turned to find Eli standing in the doorway, blanket still wrapped around him, but his face white with shock. "I told you," the boy whispered. "I told you she was dying." Logan's mouth opened, ready to scold him for leaving the vehicle, but stopped. Eli rushed to his mother's side, falling to his knees. "Mama," he whispered. "Mama, please wake up." A faint moan escaped Ava's throat. Logan turned, letting the boy hold her hand while he scanned the rest of the room. A smashed bottle of whiskey lay across the floorboards, its shards glinting under the flashlight. The label was half torn, but still legible. Holt's Reserve. Beside it, barely visible under an overturned milk crate, was a receipt. Logan lifted it carefully with his gloved hand and read the name. Kane Maddox. He'd seen the name plenty of times. Petty thefts, suspected bootlegging, domestic calls that always ended with no charges filed. Too slippery, too protected. Until now. Logan slipped the receipt and bottle fragment into an evidence pouch. Ranger suddenly stepped toward the back door, nose flaring. A gust of wind pushed it open further, revealing a trail of fresh prints heading out into the dark. Someone ran. Logan muttered. And they ran fast. He turned to Eli. She's going to make it, son, but she needs warmth now. The boy didn't move from her side. Ranger did, though. The dog circled Ava's body once, then laid down, his thick coat pressing against her side. She's freezing, Eli whispered. I know, Logan said. We're going to change that. He took off his own jacket and wrapped it tight around Ava's upper body. Then he looked to Ranger, who lifted his head to meet Logan's eyes. Stay with her, Logan said quietly. Ranger didn't blink, just stayed in place, head on Ava's hip, like he knew exactly what was being asked of him. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the trees. Somewhere out there, Kane Maddox was running. But now Logan had a victim who'd survived, a witness who'd spoken, and a dog whose instincts were never wrong. The storm hadn't passed, not even close. But in this shattered room, there was finally something solid to hold on to. Truth, and 3 lives bound by it. The woods around the trailer were still humming with night insects, but Logan could feel something had shifted. Ranger stood rigid by the broken porch steps, nose twitching, one paw lifted. A quiet growl built in his throat, deep and deliberate, not a warning of danger but of absence. Someone was just here. Logan murmured, stepping cautiously past a tipped-over bucket and into the dim interior of the trailer. Paramedics had already loaded Ava into the ambulance. Her vitals were stable, but the bruises spoke volumes. Her wrists were ringed in ligature marks. Old ones. Faded. Then fresh. Someone had been hurting her for a long time. Ranger pushed past Logan and sniffed along the floor, then stopped by a rusted tin box wedged behind the crumbling sofa. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just looked back at Logan and sat. Alert. Waiting. Logan crouched, brushed aside a moldy blanket and pried the box free. Inside was a small, hand-stitched notebook, no larger than a pack of cigarettes, the edges worn thin. Ava had wrapped it in a strip of cloth that smelled faintly of her perfume, cheap lavender and nicotine. He opened it. No diary entries, no poems or prayers, just names. Dozens of them. Next to each name were odd codes, dates, dollar amounts. Some entries had check marks, others were crossed out. The last few pages were marked with symbols, a triangle, a dollar sign, and something that looked like a crow. Logan flipped back to the first page. The name at the top stopped him cold. Mayor Rowan Grady. Below it, 5 shipments month, 12K, Route C. He looked up at Ranger, who sat staring at the trailer door like he could still see the man who had just slipped through it. This wasn't just domestic abuse, Logan said aloud. She was sitting on something bigger. A twig snapped outside. Logan froze. Ranger's ears went flat. They moved together, silently, back onto the porch and around the side. Ranger stopped at a patch of fresh mud. Logan crouched and saw the boot prints, deep, erratic, heading toward the river. Someone had fled not long ago. The trail ended at the water. No boat, no sign of a car, just disturbed reeds and the smell of outboard fuel lingering on the wind. Whoever he is, he knows we found her, Logan said, more to himself than to Ranger. And he knows she was keeping records. He looked back toward the trailer, trying to piece together the timeline. Ava had hidden that notebook in a box buried behind furniture. She hadn't expected anyone to find it, unless she'd left it there on purpose. A backup plan, a final plea. Ranger suddenly stood, and moved toward a stack of discarded furniture behind the trailer, tail stiff. He pawed at a torn mattress, nose working furiously. Logan pulled the debris away and uncovered a crumpled denim jacket, inside a phone. It was cracked, the battery hanging loose, but it lit up when he pressed the button. 1 missed call, 3 unread texts, all from a number marked only K. Text 1, too many questions, shut her up. Text 2, tonight, or we both go down. Text 3, no loose ends, you know what to do. Logan's pulse kicked up. He pocketed the phone, looked around, half expecting someone to be watching. But the woods held their breath. Nothing moved. Back at the sheriff's station, he made copies of the notebook, then stashed the original in the glove box. He didn't trust the evidence locker. Not yet. Not until he could verify which names in that book were allies, and which were wearing uniforms. The more he read, the clearer it became. Ava hadn't just been a battered woman. She'd been trying to dismantle a network from the inside, and she'd almost made it. Almost. Logan's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. She's stable, the nurse said, but she keeps repeating the same name in her sleep. Whose name? Logan asked. Kane, the nurse replied. She keeps whispering, Kane knows. He knows about Eli. The air left Logan's lungs. Ranger shifted beside him, sensing the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a small-town smuggling ring anymore. This was about the boy who hadn't spoken a word since he was found in the woods, and the mother who had been silenced before she could tell anyone why. Logan looked out the window of his truck, toward the dark outline of the tree line. Someone out there still thought they had the upper hand, and they didn't know that a K9 named Ranger had already picked up the scent. The morning fog hung low over the ridgeline as Logan tightened his boots and glanced down at Ranger, who was already alert, ears forward, tail still. The dog had picked up the trail again, something sharp and acrid in the air, almost buried under the scent of wet pine and old ash. Whatever it was, it had Ranger on edge. They'd followed the signs for nearly 3 miles, Ranger leading, Logan keeping low and quiet behind. Broken twigs, a discarded energy drink can, tire tracks half smeared by rain. But when Ranger abruptly stopped at the edge of a crumbling dirt path, Logan knew something was different. What is it, boy? He whispered. Ranger didn't bark. He crouched low, nose pointed at the gaping mouth of an old quarry up ahead, now overgrown with vines and draped in mist. Logan had only heard rumors about the place, abandoned years ago, but supposedly a favorite hideout for teenagers, and more recently, something worse. The kind of place where trouble brewed away from town eyes. They approached the perimeter slowly. Ranger's body tensed. His hackles rose not from fear, but something closer to warning. The kind of stillness that said, "We're not alone." From behind a moss-covered boulder, Logan pulled out his phone and hit record. At first he saw nothing but shadows and rusting metal scaffolding. Then a low thud echoed, followed by muffled laughter. 2 voices, maybe 3. Logan eased forward until he saw them. Kane. The bastard stood in the center of a makeshift shelter built into the quarry wall, steel sheets, tarps, and rotting wood. Logan zoomed in. Kane was counting bills while another man unloaded crates from the back of a pickup, brown, unmarked boxes. Logan's pulse quickened. He leaned closer. Then he saw it. Bottles. Dozens of them. Glass labeled in foreign print. Homemade stills tucked behind tarps, and a stack of firearms propped against a wall. It wasn't just bootlegging. It was distribution. And it wasn't small time. Ranger shifted suddenly, body going rigid. A 4th man appeared from behind the truck, lighting a cigarette. The ember flared, and for a split second his gaze swept in their direction. Logan froze, hand on Ranger's harness. The man squinted, stepped forward. Logan could feel Ranger's muscles coil beneath his palm. "Shh," he whispered, but it was too late. The man yelled. Voices rose. Boots scuffed gravel. "Run!" Logan breathed. They bolted. Ranger tore down the embankment ahead, weaving between rocks and fallen logs with precise, powerful strides. Logan followed, ducking low, the sound of footsteps and shouting behind him. Gunfire cracked. A warning shot, maybe. Or worse. But Ranger didn't falter. He darted left into a narrow path hidden by underbrush, then suddenly stopped, doubling back and leading Logan behind a fallen tree. They lay there, breath held. Footsteps neared, then paused. "Think you saw something?" "Could have been a coyote. Let's sweep the perimeter. Cane'll freak if anyone's been snooping." The voices drifted off. 10 minutes passed before Logan moved again. He pulled up the video on his phone. It was shaky but clear. Cane, the crates, the makeshift stills, and one moment when a man handed Cane a file. Logan zoomed in. On the file was a town seal, City Planning Commission. "What the hell?" Beside him, Ranger whined low. Logan scratched behind his ear. The dog leaned into the touch, but his eyes stayed locked on the quarry above. He hadn't relaxed. Not completely, neither had Logan. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't about Ava's bruises anymore. That had been a symptom. This was the disease. A web of corruption tied to money, land, power. Logan pocketed the phone. "Come on, buddy. We've got work to do." Ranger trotted ahead, never looking back, his steps silent, his purpose sharp. Behind them, the quarry stood quiet again. But something had shifted. This wasn't just a case. It was war. The night air was brittle with wind. Logan crouched behind a line of low pines, binoculars pressed to his face, eyes fixed on the trail of red tail lights snaking into the old quarry. Ranger lay beside him, silent, alert, nostrils flaring with every breeze. There was no mistaking it now. Cane was back. Across the ravine, headlights cut briefly through the trees before disappearing into a clearing. Logan squinted through the lenses. A figure stepped out of a dark SUV. Cane. Even from 100 yards away, Logan could feel the arrogance in the man's stride. Another figure approached him, one of the locals who'd stayed quiet during Logan's interviews. Cane handed over a wad of cash and gestured toward something in the truck bed. Barrels. Logan's heart kicked against his ribs. A snap of twigs behind him made Logan flinch. Ranger didn't move. Instead, the dog's ears went rigid. He tilted his head towards the ridge below. Logan followed the direction, spotted it. Movement, fast and low. Someone circling the quarry. Not a random hiker, surveillance. Ranger inched forward, then froze. A second later, Logan saw it too. Flames. A dull whoosh echoed through the forest. Orange light spilled over the quarry walls like a rising tide. Logan swung his binoculars back toward the trail. His stomach dropped. Ava's trailer. It was parked near the edge of the clearing, where she used to host community BBQs during county fairs. Logan hadn't even realized it was still there. Cane had doused it in gasoline. The first burst of fire was almost theatrical. Flames engulfed the structure with terrifying speed. "No, no, no!" Logan whispered, voice dry as gravel. He ran. Ranger shot forward like a bullet, weaving through underbrush, eyes locked ahead. Logan barely kept up. The blaze lit up the sky above the trees. The scent of smoke clawed down his throat. Branches tore at his arms and face as he pushed through the thicket. His lungs screamed. He broke into the clearing just as the flames cracked through the roof of the trailer. The door was half open. Logan bolted toward it, boots digging into soft earth. But the heat hit him like a wall. Too late. The front of the trailer groaned, metal warping under pressure. Then, an explosion. A propane tank. The blast knocked Logan off his feet. He didn't see Ranger move. He just felt the blur of motion beside him, and then the sharp tug of teeth at his jacket collar. The next thing he knew, he was being dragged, inch by inch, away from the fire. "Ranger!" Logan coughed. But the dog didn't stop. Only once they were clear of the radius, Logan pulled himself upright, chest heaving. He looked back. The trailer was gone. Just a skeleton of flame and twisted aluminum. And then he saw it. In the soot, not far from where the door had been, something caught the light. Logan limped toward it. Smoke stung his eyes, but he pressed on, boots sinking into scorched ground. It was small, half buried in ash. A necklace, a silver chain, blackened by fire but still intact. Hanging from it was a pendant, feather-shaped, worn smooth on the edges. The back was engraved in faint cursive. "For when the road gets heavy? Our tool." Logan held it up. Ava's. He'd seen her wear it the day she broke down at the town council meeting. Said it was a gift from her late husband. Said he told her it meant, "Carry light, even when you feel heavy." Logan stared at it a long moment. Then he turned to Ranger, who stood quietly at his side, tongue low, chest rising with effort. Ash speckled his fur like war paint. "You found it," Logan said hoarsely. Ranger blinked. Quiet approval. The fire still crackled behind them, but it no longer mattered. The trailer was gone, but Kane's mistake had left a fingerprint. Logan wrapped the necklace in a bandana and tucked it into his vest. Not just as evidence, as a promise. Later that night, Logan met Eli at the cabin. The old man sat on the porch with a thermos of coffee, staring at the dark line of trees. Ranger lay beside him, paws caked with mud and ash. Without a word, Logan handed him the necklace. Eli didn't speak for a while. When he did, his voice cracked. "I gave that to Ava the day after she buried Mark. She wore it every day. Told me it helped her breathe when folks stared at her like she didn't belong." Logan sat beside him. "She still belongs, and this is our proof Kane was trying to erase her." Eli nodded slowly, fingers tightening around the pendant. He looked at Ranger. "You saved him again, huh?" Ranger tilted his head, just slightly. Eli smiled through the pain. "You don't bark for food, do you, boy? You bark when truth's trying to be burned down." For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Eli looped the chain around his wrist. "I'm keeping it," he said. "Not because I need it, because she'd want someone to carry the weight and keep walking." The night was quiet, but not silent. Somewhere deep in the trees, an owl called. Ranger lifted his head, and in the flickering glow of the cabin's porch light, Logan could have sworn the feather pendant shimmered just for a second, like it was ready to fly. By the time Logan got the green light for the raid, night had already swallowed the hills. His boots hit the gravel behind the sheriff's office, gears grinding as he slid on his vest. The air was thick with the scent of pine, sweat, and something acrid. Burnt rubber from Kane's fire still lingered in the valley like a warning. Ranger sat on the tailgate, eyes scanning the dark as if he knew something was wrong. Logan felt it too. He hadn't seen Eli since the fire. The kid had barely spoken, just stared at the feather-shaped locket dangling from Logan's rearview mirror, the only thing they'd salvaged from Ava's scorched trailer. He'd clutched it like a lifeline before a paramedic ushered him into the ambulance. Now the hospital was quiet. Too quiet. Logan called the front desk, then pediatric, then security. Nobody had seen Eli since just after dinner. Logan's knuckles went white around the phone. He didn't say a word. Just hung up, turned to Ranger. "Find him." The shepherd didn't need a second command. His nose dropped instantly, picking up the trail from the hospital's side door. Within seconds, he was pulling hard, dragging Logan toward the woods behind the town's outer ridge. 3 miles in, the trail veered into old logging roads, now used by smugglers and meth cookers who paid Kane in silence. Logan's heart thudded in his throat. The kid had wandered straight into a viper pit. Eli hadn't meant to run. He just couldn't wait. The necklace had been his dad's last gift, his mum's last smile. Ava used to say it was a promise, that they'd be okay, even when everything else wasn't. Now the chain sat heavy in his palm as he trudged towards the warehouse Kane had once mentioned on a call, a place filled with junk trucks and no questions. That's where Ava's things might have gone. He wanted to bring something back for her, something that wasn't ashes. A breeze whispered through the trees. Eli tucked the locket into his hoodie and kept walking, unaware that a black SUV had just crept to a stop behind him. The warehouse was a crooked mess of metal and silence. Burnt-out trailers, busted forklifts, and rusted-out containers sprawled like forgotten skeletons. Eli ducked past a loose chain-link fence and crept toward the largest building, where yellow floodlights blinked on and off like a heartbeat. He didn't see the shadows move behind him. Didn't hear the footfalls over his own. Until it was too late. Rough hands yanked him backward. A voice hissed, "What the hell you doing here, kid?" Another voice joined. "That Kane's boy?" "Don't matter. We can't have witnesses." Eli screamed, kicking. A punch landed near his ribs, folding him in half. He hit the ground hard, gasping for air, eyes wide. Then a growl broke through the chaos. Low, primal, building like a storm. From the far end of the lot, a streak of muscle and fur tore through the dark. Ranger, teeth bared, legs pumping, every ounce of him thundered toward the men holding Eli. One turned, reaching for his waistband. Too slow. Ranger launched. The man went down with a howl as 55 pounds of trained fury latched onto his forearm. The second man stumbled back, pulling a taser. Ranger's eyes flicked. Then another figure burst from the shadows. Logan. He hit the man square in the chest, knocking the taser loose. They both crashed against a stack of crates. Logan drove his elbow down, disarming the man in seconds. "Stay down," he growled. Ranger stood between the fallen thugs and Eli, snarling. But when Logan turned, the shepherd was already nose to nose with the boy. Eli wasn't crying, just shaking. "I didn't mean to make trouble," he whispered. "I just wanted to give it to her, before she forgot." He held up the necklace. The feather pendant gleamed under a flickering bulb. Logan knelt beside him, voice low. "She'll never forget you, Eli, but she sure as hell would have wanted you safe." Eli blinked, then nodded. "Come on," Logan said, hand resting on Ranger's back. "Time to go home." Later that night, Logan stood in the doorway of the hospital room where Ava slept, her face pale but peaceful. He placed the necklace in her hand. Eli curled up on the chair beside her, Ranger at his feet, still alert, even in stillness. Outside, the wind stirred through the town like a whisper. They didn't know it yet, but things were about to shift. Because while the fire had tried to erase the truth, one boy and one dog refused to let it die. And someone was watching. From farther up the ridge, a pair of binoculars lowered slowly. A cell phone buzzed once in a coat pocket. A voice spoke into the night. "They're getting too close." The line went dead. The warehouse loomed at the edge of the old freight yard, its rusted tin roof rattling under the weight of the wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of engine oil. Long-forgotten crates sat in crooked stacks, and broken light filtered through high, grimy windows. It was a place built for hiding, and tonight, for hurting. Eli sat on the cold floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, lip trembling, but chin defiantly lifted. Kane paced near him, the shadows flickering over his face with each step. He wasn't yelling, wasn't even angry. That's what made it worse. He was calm, cold, controlled. "You should have stayed in the hospital, kid," Kane said, wiping his hands on a stained rag. "But I gotta admit, your timing was almost poetic." The chain with the eagle pendant hung from Kane's gloved hand, twisting in the dim light. "You think this matters? This little token from a dead man?" "He wasn't a dead man to me," Eli said, voice cracking. "He was my dad." Kane smirked. Then maybe he should have thought harder before crossing the wrong people. Outside, Ranger's ears flattened against his skull as the scent of oil, sweat, and Eli's fear hit his nose. He crawled low along the perimeter, body tight with focus. Logan crouched beside a rusted shipping container, eyes tracking the pattern of movement inside through a cracked panel. 2 exits, 1 blocked. Logan whispered into the mic. "I go in loud. You flank right, watch for crossfire." Ranger didn't need words. His tail gave a single, tight flick. Logan kicked in the side door. Gunfire cracked through the warehouse. A shot ricocheted off a beam, throwing sparks. Eli screamed. Kane ducked behind a stack of crates, yanking Eli upright with one arm, pistol to the boy's head. "One more step and the kid's gone," Kane bellowed. Logan froze mid-step. "Let him go, Kane. It's over." "Is it?" Kane laughed. "You think bringing a dog makes you some kind of hero?" In the shadows behind the crates, Ranger moved. He saw Eli's wide eyes, saw Kane's trembling hand. The safety was off. Ranger launched. It wasn't a clean strike. Kane turned too fast, the pistol grazing Ranger's shoulder as the dog hit him mid-chest. The shot went wild, splintering a support beam. The two slammed to the ground, Kane shouting as sharp teeth clamped down on his gun hand. Logan moved fast, boot to wrist, knee to throat, cuffs out in seconds. Eli scrambled back, hands still tied, heart racing so loud he barely heard the sirens outside. He dropped to his knees beside Ranger, who whimpered softly, paw pressed awkwardly against his bleeding side. "No," Eli gasped, voice shaking. No, stay with me, boy, please." Logan ripped open his med kit, hands already bloodied. "You did good, Ranger. Just hold still. You did good." Ranger licked Eli's wrist once before going still, breathing shallow but steady. By the time the local cops arrived, floodlights painting the warehouse in sterile white, Kane was gagged and half-conscious, but his mouth still worked when they hoisted him up. "You think this ends with me?" He spat at Logan. "You really think this whole operation ran without help? Someone in your town signs the damn shipping papers?" He smiled through broken teeth. "Check your mayor's office." The words dropped like a rock into still water. Logan stood frozen, blood on his hands, heart pounding. Beside him, Ranger let out a low, warning growl, not toward Kane, but toward the uniformed man in the back of the arriving unit. The one who'd always been a little too helpful, a little too quick to deflect questions. And suddenly Logan understood. This wasn't over. Not yet. Rain drummed gently on the cabin roof. It was the first real storm since the standoff at the warehouse, but inside, the air was still. Logan sat by the fire, a wool blanket around his shoulders, his eyes never far from the cot where Ranger lay, one leg bandaged, chest rising slow but steady. His ribs had taken the bullet's impact, bruised and bloodied, but nothing vital was hit. The vet said he'd recover. Logan hadn't let him out of his sight since. Across the room, Eli sat cross-legged beside Ava. Her bruises had faded to soft yellows and purples. The swelling around her eye had gone down. Her voice was still a whisper, but she was speaking again. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked, looking at Ranger. Logan turned his head. "Yeah, he's tough. Tougher than me." Eli reached over and gently stroked the fur along Ranger's neck. The dog's eyes fluttered open, focused, and then closed again. as if even resting, he was aware of every breath around him. For a long time, nobody spoke. The fire crackled. Thunder murmured somewhere out over the hills. Then Logan said, "You ever hear about the one before him?" Eli looked up. "Before Ranger." Logan nodded slowly. "Afghanistan, 2012. His name was Gaeta, purebred Belgian mâle. Smart as hell, fearless. He could sniff out a buried IED from 20 yards and still turn in time for a belly rub." Logan chuckled, but there wasn't much humor in it. His fingers twisted around the edge of his mug. "He took a hit meant for me," he said. "Remote detonation. I never saw the wire. 1 second we were sweeping a compound, next thing, fire and sand. My ears were ringing for 2 days. When I came to, he was on top of me, body shielded mine." Eli's face went pale. "I spent years convincing myself I didn't deserve another partner. Then came Ranger. Wasn't even my decision. They brought him into rehab from a failed deployment. Said he was too unstable for redeployment. Bit a handler during a flashbang drill." He looked over at the dog. "But I saw something in him. That edge wasn't wildness. It was warning. Like he saw the world 10 seconds before we did." Ivor sat up a little. "So you trained him." "We trained each other," Logan said. "I needed to believe second chances existed. Ranger needed someone who wouldn't flinch." The fire popped. Ranger stirred, shifting his weight with a soft whimper. Logan was at his side in a heartbeat, hand on his back. "You're good, boy. Rest," he whispered. Then, as if understanding, Ranger placed his paw on Logan's hand and left it there. Eli stood up and walked to the window. The trees were dark shadows, shivering with the wind. "We going to tell someone about what Kane said? About someone in the town helping him?" Logan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "We will, but not now. He's still talking. I've got friends in the bureau following the money. They'll find the rot. We're not done. Not yet." Eli turned. "And Ava?" Logan glanced at her. "She stays here, as long as she needs. Same goes for you." Ava smiled, a quiet thing that reached her eyes. They spent the night together in that cabin, not saying much, just sitting near one another, letting the silence settle. At some point, Eli moved closer to Ranger and lay down beside him on the rug. Ranger didn't move. He simply opened one eye, looked at the boy, and gave a tired, deep huff, then closed it again. That night, Logan dreamt of the desert, of Gaeta, of that split second when everything went red. But for the first time in years, he didn't wake up gasping. When he opened his eyes, the storm had passed, the cabin still. Outside, dawn was beginning to rise behind the ridge. Inside, Ranger stirred, lifted his head, and stared at the door as if something was coming. Not a threat, but something new. A full year had passed since the cabin fire, and the scars, both visible and buried, had begun to settle into the quiet of something like peace. Ava stood behind the counter of a small cafe, tucked just off the edge of town, where pine trees still whispered secrets to those who chose to listen. The sign above the door read, "Ranger's Rest," carved by hand and stained with the kind of love that could only come from surviving something brutal and choosing, against all odds, to stay. The cafe wasn't just a place for coffee, it was a place for healing. Mostly women came through the doors. Some were mothers escaping bad situations, others just trying to stand on their own again. Ava didn't ask too many questions. She just served warmth, in mugs and in silence. Every morning, without fail, Logan came by. No badge, no uniform, just a plain flannel shirt and a scar across his forearm that seemed to pulse more on rainy days. He never talked much about what happened that night in the woods. Not anymore, but sometimes, when the cafe was quiet and the wind shifted just so, He'd glance toward the trees like something still stirred out there. And he wasn't wrong. Ranger lay on the porch, head between his front paws, eyes half-lidded but never unaware. He was older now. The grey along his muzzle had spread, and his gait had slowed. But the way he watched the tree line hadn't changed. He still tracked every shadow, every movement, not as a reflex, but as a promise. One afternoon, the bell above the cafe door rang softly. A high school senior stepped in, holding a leather-bound notebook and a hopeful expression. "I'm doing a piece for the school paper," she said, glancing nervously towards the porch where Ranger rested. "It's about heroes that don't wear uniforms. My teacher said I should talk to you. About what happened. About the dog who saved a life and uncovered something the town never wanted to face." Logan looked up from his coffee. He studied her for a long moment, then pushed back his chair and stood, his movement slower these days, but not weak. He didn't say much. Just walked out onto the porch, placed a hand gently on Ranger's back, then pointed to the wooden plaque hanging just above the front gate. The words were burned deep into the grain, not showy, but permanent. "He didn't bark for food," Logan said, voice low. "He barked for the truth." The girl stared at the sign, her eyes glassing over. "Is it true?" she asked. "That there was a cover-up? That no one believed Ava, even when she begged the department to reopen the case?" Logan nodded once. They believed. They just didn't want to deal with what it meant. Ranger lifted his head slightly, as if responding to the shift in air, the soft tension that still lived beneath the surface. "There's a reason this place is called Ranger's Rest," Ava said from the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Because if anyone earned peace, it's him." The girl scribbled something into her notebook, then hesitated. "Can I take a photo of him?" "Ask him," Logan said simply. She knelt, careful not to move too fast. "Is it okay, Ranger?" The old shepherd looked at her, those amber eyes holding decades of storms and silent victories. He gave a single, deliberate blink. Click. The shutter caught not just the dog, but the stillness around him. The quiet strength of a guardian who had no medals but carried truth like a shield. Later that evening, as the sun bled gold through the pines and the town settled into its usual hush, Ava sat beside Ranger on the porch. Logan stood nearby, sipping the last of his coffee. "Do you think he knows it's all different now?" she asked. Logan looked out over the forest, then down at the dog. "He always knew how to read people better than I did," he said. "Maybe he's just waiting for the next person who needs him." Silence. Then Ranger, without lifting his head, let out a low, contented huff. It was not a warning, not a protest. It was something like agreement. He was still watching, still guarding, not out of duty, but because it was in his bones to protect. Even now, especially now, because some guardians don't retire. They just find quieter hills to stand watch over. And as the light dimmed and the cafe closed for the night, Ranger stayed exactly where he was. Facing the woods, eyes open, just in case. What about you? What's your story with a loyal pet? If this tale moved you, share it with someone who understands the silent strength of a dog that never gives up. And don't forget to subscribe to the German Shepherd channel for more powerful stories of loyalty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between human and canine. Because sometimes the ones who bark for the truth are the ones who save us in ways we'll never fully understand.